Okay, I've been aware from the beginning that our harassers have one campaign for me and a separate one for Sephora. And these are designed to drive a wedge between me and her. So my wife does not understand the harassment that bother me. And I understand, but not the way my wife does the harassments that are bothering her. In other words, those harassments which are just making her angry and upset. Well, as she's explaining to me, I don't get her anger and her upset because I'm not deaf like her and I haven't suffered the same kind of suffering that she suffered throughout her life. And as a deaf person, when you disturb her in certain ways, and you know how to do that, you know how to get at her where it hurts. Um, I'm aware that the harassers are approaching their harassment of my wife that way. Now, when she explains the harassments, you see, I'm not deaf, so the harassments do not bother me the way they bother her. Okay, I don't know how to explain it better, except to say that, like, I've heard or read that, like in a restaurant, if you're there with a woman in the restaurant, she's eating at your table with you, she's your friend or your wife or whatever. And, well, that woman, from what I've read, might be aware of conversations going on the other side of the room behind her. Whereas while you're having your meal there, you're a man and you have no such awareness, okay? So if that woman says to you, man, these folks are just, they're bothering the hell out of me with the way they're talking back there. And you say, what? What are you talking about? These people, look back there, you know what I mean? And she gets your attention to that, and you're thinking, I'm just making this up as I go along. You're thinking, my God, I mean, she's all upset about somebody on the other side of the room, but I'm not getting it, stop listening or whatever. But you see, you don't understand how something like that could be bothering this other person, okay? Because you're not a woman and you don't have the kind of awareness that women have. And whatever they're talking about might not bother you either. Maybe they're talking about something that's disturbing to her or to women in general. So you're not getting it, right? I'm trying to make the point that my wife is profoundly deaf. I'm not. And so, I've imagined that, being closed off the way she is from relationships and sharing with folks in ways that people take for granted, just common interchanges between people about the weather and so on. That's it's out of the question for somebody like her. So she's all closed off in this little world, and this phone of hers, this is a precious thing for her, okay? And it's in her little world, and you go in there and start messing with stuff that she's learned to feel is almost extension of her as a person. She's kind of absorbed the boundaries between her and this phone into a kind of continuum, right? That's her. If you go in there and start disturbing things that she's learned to depend on, even the simplest things. This is a deaf person. They are highly perceptive visually. and you go in there and start messing with the slightest thing. Like one of the things she complains a lot about is text that she's depending on, captions and so on, is being messed with on her phone all the time. The text is going from like a readable size to some tiny thing, and this is extremely disturbing to her. I'm saying this is deliberate harassment. This is not accidental on her phone. This is deliberately somebody in her phone harassing her this way in tiny little microcosmic ways like this all day long. And I can speak for my wife for when the internet began around 2000, I would say, for the general public, having access to computers and so on. My wife was at the computer happily all the time. No complaints, okay? And she went to certain websites regularly and was quite happy to do that. She enjoyed the internet thoroughly. And then when the harassment started, she's telling me, I can't get these websites I always went to. Or she would say, on these websites now I'm seeing names of these demonic siblings of mine being entered into ownership of our house and things like this, which is extremely disturbing to my wife. I would say, what difference does it make what somebody says online, right? But not to my wife, okay? This is disturbing profoundly to her for a lot of reasons, okay? I can't go into how deaf people are in there looking at the world the way she is and learning about each other. So it's of concern to my wife that other deaf people are going to see that her house is owned by someone other than her. Now, there's nothing to hearing people who say, well, nobody depends on stuff like that for ownership of a house. But deaf people, okay, let's just hypothesize from what I've seen of my wife and seen of deaf people. They may not think that way, okay? A lot of deaf people are poor. I mean, deaf people are going to start attacking me, but they have one hell of a hard life. I think they'll agree with me on that. And home ownership, as hard as it is for everybody these days, is especially hard for deaf people, I would say, from my experience with them. They have one hell of a hard time in the workplace, okay? So if hearing people are having a hard time buying a house, deaf people are too. And you're going to start messing with my wife this way and these other ways. You're going to mess with the captions. This, I would say, you're harassing her captions like that. This is a hate crime. You ought to be found out and accused. Well, anyway, it's not just that. It's a microcosmically designed harassment campaign on my wife, okay? And it's designed to be this way that I don't understand the depth of the disturbance being created in her. And meanwhile, I got my own separately designed harassment campaign that involves completely different things, okay? Which my wife doesn't understand from her point of view. She doesn't get what's happened to me, how upsetting it is to me, okay? So the idea is to drive us apart from each other, but that is not going to work. It is not going to work. And I got to say that in conclusion here, this world has been trying to separate me from my wife from the moment I met her at Gallaudet University back in 1993. What was happening? Some deaf people, deaf women, were approaching my wife and telling her that I was severely mentally diseased and a danger to her. She should stay away from me. Now, did they know me? Had I done anything to them to make them talk this way about me? No, I had not. So my wife, what did she do? She disregarded what they were saying. And I've said, I got recordings where I said, I went to get my wife this so-called help from these so-called professionals in this absolute lie of of a so-called science. And what was happening? They were treating me like I was some kind of criminal, and they were going to question us in separate rooms. And all they were talking to with my wife was, is this man abusing you? How is he abusing you? What is he doing? Is he abusing you? Like two criminals being interrogated by police, okay? That's the way they did this in their so-called help. This was the help being offered. The help was to drive us apart, and after incredible difficulty looking for somebody who knew some sign language to help her, what was the man saying to her when she's telling him, my husband is having a hell of a time in an apartment, I don't like it? He's telling her to divorce me. That's his solution, okay? What did she say? She said, bye to him. And that was the end of him. She gonna divorce me? No, okay? Ridiculous advice from an idiot, okay? And that ridiculous help, I don't know what to call it. That lie, that doublespeak tragedy of a junk science, okay? So they were going to get help from the professionals, and they're going to drive us apart there too. No, they're not. So these harassers now, over the past 10 years, have these harassment campaigns. They also are going to fail, and they're going to go to jail. What they're doing. Okay, they're not going to drive us apart. They're going to jail or worse. Today is 26th of May, 2026, and the time is 12 minutes after 11 p.m. in Tokyo, Japan. Make a lot of sense out there in the land of lies. You're part of my audience. You've wrecked my life with lies and false accusations, and I want me and my family safely out of here forever. And I mean that.